Hello everyone, today we are once again back looking at the Dutch tech trees, especially the aviation one, and this will be the final chapter of having a look at the Dutch aviation stuff. Next time we'll either be looking at the naval forces or we'll be having a look at the ground forces. The idea is to do several videos looking at them as well, kind of like what we've done with this aviation tech tree. We're going to be covering what is seen as rank 6 and 7. There isn't a lot of vehicles, but still a decent amount to have a nice little chat about, and obviously I am joined once again by Soldier and Super Cacti. So let's get into it, starting with the first vehicle, which is American but highly exported, basically exported to pretty much anybody who wanted it. We have the North American F-86K. So what can you tell me about this version, Soldier, and also does it differ at all from other versions that we see in the game right now, I suppose?
Yeah, so the Sabre, obviously an vehicle that got exported across the globe. Yeah, the F-86K is obviously the one we already have in the French and Italian tech tree. But something about the Dutch ones, which I find really confusing, is the cannons it used. According to some sources, it carried M39 cannons, whereas in-game the two we have carry M24A1 cannons. And one source even stated it used sawn-off Hispano Mark V cannons. Like, I don't have the exact answer right now, but that's just really confusing and odd. Let's just call it odd. The Sabre itself is, the first one at least, is pretty standard, more of the jet fighter, still with the older wing, I suppose. I think it can carry bombs, but not stuff like sidewinders yet. Which is where we get the F-40. The F-40 refers to the wing it uses. And we're looking at around 1961, 1960, they were modified to the F-40, which allowed them to carry the sidewinders, the A9Bs. So overall, we have something really confusing here. And on the other end, yeah, it's an F-86K. Should be pretty fun.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting vehicle just because of the armament confusion. I've personally never heard of an F-86K which had its guns changed, especially to the drastic amount of either adding in the M39s or adding in, of course, some sawn-off Hispanos. But after, going through a few sources and going to, the people I normally go to when it comes to the Sabre, I've pretty much drawn a blank. So it will be interesting if any of you have any sources on this F-86K. If it did have different guns, it would be interesting to know. But also, it, just as an extra point, kept the same radar as the others that we see in-game. The next vehicle that is on offer is the Fokker Hunter, the F4 and the F6. This carries on from some of the T variants that we saw earlier. Tell us about this vehicle, Super Cacti. What differs the F6 here compared to the British one?
So in Dutch service, the F6 never had the SRAMs, so this should be taken into consideration. When it comes to sidewinders, I'm not too sure. Do you actually know anything about that, Soldier? Did the F6 carry any sort of air-to-air missiles?
Yeah, I think these carried A9Bs. I'm not sure the quantity on the wings, but I know they carry them.
So it's most likely similar to the premium Hunter F6, or I think it's the FGA something that we have in the game right now. That one carries sidewinders instead of SRAMs. But yeah, basically the Hunter in Dutch service, it was a step up from the Meteor. So we already covered the Sabre, and alongside the Sabre we thought, well, we can get our hands on the Hunter. And they're called Fokker Hunters, again, for the reason that Fokker built them themselves in the Netherlands. When it comes to differences, they are pretty much identical to the British model, except for what we said, the F6 carries sidewinders instead of SRAMs.
So it still should be pretty powerful, even though it won't have what is seen as the most powerful missiles in game. It can still put up a hell of a fight. Moving on to our first premium vehicle of rank 6, we have the Fiat F-86K Q305. So this seems to be an Italian Sabre dog. So how does this machine find itself in the premium part of this tech tree, Soldier?
So this is a sort of an odd one. I think I've said that before, but let's keep rolling with it. So the Q305 was a plane that was flown over from Italy on the birthday, I suppose, of the Air Force. So it was flown over. It was stationed here, and it was like shown and presented and stuff like that. And afterwards, it went to a museum, which you can still visit today. So this is more of a museum plane in that regard. Something odd about it is that the Q305, I think I mentioned it before, it didn't, that registration was in service in the Netherlands, but it was like sold or scrapped. But then we had like another Q305, but then that one didn't enter service, but just was presented. So that would be kind of a confusion there. Besides that, it's a museum plane, which kind of makes it interesting in a way. And yeah, it was built by Fiat. It actually served in the Italian Air Force as well, so that's why it's also pretty Italian. Oh yeah, and the reason they kept the Q305 the registration was because the construction number of the original Q305 had the number 305 in it. Yeah, this you can get a lot of confusion around this vehicle.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. But at least for me, when it comes to premium vehicles, for me, the perfect premium vehicle is one which is pretty much just a copy of a tech tree vehicle with a bit of premium boosters on it and also maybe a different skin, maybe an iconic one. And therefore, this one fits the bill for me for that category. So I'm definitely happy to see it. The next vehicle, which is going to be the rank 6 premium, we'll actually just do that before we do the rank 7s, is the Canadair NF5A K3001. So I believe this would be the first, well actually no, we have some other Canadairs like the Sabre. Tell us, what does Canadair mean, I suppose would be a nice little jumping point, Cacti. And also, what is this plane before us? It looks pretty new.
So, from what I know, Canadair is a Canadian company, and what you see before you is an F5 Freedom Fighter that was built by Canadair in Canada and then sold through to us. So it's a bit of a complicated story, I suppose. But this aircraft you see before you is one single, one specialized vehicle, the K3001. That's the registration number for it. What this aircraft was a research aircraft to test the different weapon configurations. So first of all, they removed the two guns, the 220 mils that were in the nose, and they replaced it with things like sensors, cameras, just testing equipment. And then they decided to went on to just add everything, every possible weapon onto the aircraft and test it. So it had sidewinders, it had paveway laser bombs, it had cluster bombs. Anything you can think of, this aircraft would have tested it. So in the game, it would be a sole attacker aircraft because it does not have the primary forward-facing guns that you would use in a fighter role. But you just get these crazy weapon loadouts that just make no sense whatsoever. And well, the whole it being a rank 6 premium, a battle rating 10.0, I think a lot of people would not like that. But in my opinion, because it's such a weird and well, very limited aircraft and only the attacking role, I suppose it's fine.
Yeah, I personally think that at least for me, I'm kind of against these really high tier premiums. But I think if we're going to throw them in, it would have to follow the same criteria as we see, or at least for me, the criteria that the F86K has before it. And definitely this Canadair would fit that bill, and it would also fit the bill that we've seen Gaijin do before with stuff like the Hunter FGA 9, I believe it is. So we'll have to see if they dip their toes more into the Rank 6 premiums for planes, and I definitely think that would be a nice one to add. Maybe even a nice cherry on top of the tree to sell it to people. The next vehicle to have a look at is one of the 2 Rank 7s that are on offer, and this is the highest BR one, at least by this tech tree. It is the Fokker F104G. So the F104 is a plane which isn't in-game yet, but a lot of people have asked for it. Tell us about this in Dutch service, Soldier.
So yeah, this is the Starfighter. It's a really cool name. But yeah, a lot of countries obviously used this plane. Like I know the Germans, for example, used it, and so did the Dutch, and we actually licensed produced it. Again by Fokker, who else? So I think it still retains a lot of similar weaponry options, like still has the M61 Vulcan, it has Mark 82 bombs. It can carry napalm, it can carry weird weapon ammunition, it can carry sidewinders, AIM-9Bs or Js. It can carry all kinds of rocket loadouts like HVARs, LUAs, and some other like bombs like the P-43. So this is just this fighter / attacker aircraft that can carry quite a lot of different loadout options. But yeah, it's again it's quite a step up from what we already have, I suppose. So it would be a really cool plane to look forward to.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those planes which a lot of people have asked for a long time, and obviously they asked for it in the the American tree or the Italian tree, because the Italians built I believe it's the license-built F-104S, which is kind of like an upgraded version of the Super Starfighter, as it was known, so it would be a better version than the American one. But the G is also one which would be lovely to see, obviously armed with the 20mm Vulcan, and as Soldier said, some sidewinders and other nice little additions to it. It would definitely be a dart flying through the air at you that you'd have to get used to at Mach 2. The last plane of this tech tree is the Canadair NF5A. So as along with the premium one, or the premium NF5A, the K3001, what is the difference between this tech tree one and that premium cacti? And also, would you see this as the crowning glory of the tree, or the F104?
So this NF5A is just the streamlined standard fighter model. If you look this aircraft up on the internet, you'll see, again, crazy amounts of weapon loadouts, but in Dutch servers, we only really use them as fighters, so they usually carried sidewinders, but in most cases, they only relied on the forward 2 20mm guns. And yeah, it being at battle rating 10.3, that should give you enough of information that this is not really a top-notch aircraft, if you ask me. Yes, it's fast and it's very nimble, but I feel like the F104 has more to offer. I think it's faster, in my opinion. It would handle better. And also, when it comes to the secondary loadouts, the F104 has a whole lot more going for it. If you look up the F104 in Dutch servers and also some other nations, some of them carried a sort of a missile pod on the belly of the aircraft that would carry 2 additional sidewinders. So you could fly the F104 with a configuration that has 4 sidewinders instead of only the 2 that most of the F104s carried. So I think in the end, people would choose the F104. But of course, the Freedom Fighter should not be forgotten. It's still a very, very capable aircraft.
I do want to add that the NF5 is not the standard Northrop Freedom Fighter. That one was Canada Air license built that the F5, and then they modified it to the CF5 as it's known, and then the Dutch ordered it with more modifications, making it the NF5, which is kind of like the Netherlands F5. So I do want to mention that this is not the exact same as the Canada variant, which is not the exact same as the American variant. The Dutch one would actually, I think, be more nimble than the Canadian version even.
Cool. To be honest, that sounds absolutely awesome. I've always been worried about adding stuff in like the F5, just as you said, because of the extra armament options. But if this one was mainly designed to be a fighter and only having, you know, aim 9s and stuff like that, I won't be too worried. I'm much more worried about stuff like the Mavericks being added to the game, and also stuff like the AMRAAMs, which would definitely change the meta quite a lot at top tier. But anyway, that is the last vehicle from this wonderful aviation tech tree. It'll be interesting for you to give us your thoughts on the whole tech tree in the comments section, and also, as usual, look out for the next few videos where we're going to go through the naval stuff, the helicopters, and a little bit of ground as well. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.